of love is shining in my eyes. I am happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise. Yes, I am. I am happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise. Happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise. And I know the light of love is shining in my eyes. I am happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise. A little birdie told me that life is so sweet. As I listen to her song, I know I am complete. I have all the keys to love, joy, and peace. The power is infinite. Love will increase. I am happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise.
Over to you, Matthew, sir. Sir, you're on mute.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, friends, colleagues. Welcome to this seminar, and what a wonderful way to start a weekend morning. As usual, it's not a usual timing, usually we aim at the afternoons, but we're hoping we'll catch you, fresh-eyed and bushy-tailed this morning on Saturday, early morning, so that you have the rest of the day for yourself. Welcome and a good morning from the week and ABSL on behalf of both partners in this webinar. I am Matthew George, Deputy News Editor of the Week, and I'll just introduce and hand over it to Sri K.S. Rao. I'll just introduce Rao sir first. For me, it's kind of strange to introduce two people in this panel, which is Raoji and Amitji, because we have grown to be friends and more like family over the time. Almost every other fortnight we meet and talk. So it's like introducing my own seniors in the company, or brothers, so to speak. I put out a tweet yesterday which I said that this is a panel that I've come to love and respect, and I mean every word of that. Both of them, I mean. So, Sri K.S. Rao is Head Investor Education and Distribution Development for Aditya Birla Sunlife Mutual Fund. He has a long and storied history in the industry, an IIM Calcutta alumnus, an MBA in finance, and I always say this, he made a switch from dairy to banking, and how that risk has paid off is there to see. Last year was a wonderful year for ABSL. ABSL was awarded 2 times, if I'm not mistaken, and during the last webinar, 3 times. Oh,
we have just got, no sir, last week we have got another award from Asia Asset Management. This is the 3rd time in a row, sir. Thank you.
Oh, so that's a hat trick. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm sure Amitji is the person who draws, cricket and Bollywood analogy. So he would have used the hat trick joke sometime. So I've stolen your thunder, Amitji.
Sure.
So yeah, that way. So, and so I've always said that both of them are investor educators. They are, so I'm using the second part of that word, educators. They're teachers. They've been extensively involved in educating investors, and it's a pleasure to listen to them, to listen to conversations without jargon, things that they break down and give it to you, and so on. So Raoji, it's a pleasure to have you with us again this morning. Such a great pleasure to see you. Amitji is again head of Karma Yoga Knowledge Academy. And Raoji often describes Amitji as Karma Yogi, which I think is true. And like I said earlier, he brings in Bollywood and cricket and all, and his vast experience and his experience as a father as well. Both of them are parents, I should say, and that also comes through. It came especially in the one before the last seminar where we had one for children. So it was there to see. Amitji is an author, a speaker, a blogger, a widely accomplished trainer. I don't know. I've lost count of the number of webinars that Amitji would have done in 2020 and in the early part of 2021. So it's such a great pleasure, Amitji, to have you back with us again today. Welcome. It's so nice to see your face. Our guest today is Mr. Harsh Roongta, a very popular name in the media, on TV, and he writes as well. Actually, Amitji and Rauji and we have a mutual friend, Mr. Gaurav Mashruwala, and long back it seems long back, but not so long back, maybe a year ago, we met in Kochi, and then one person from the crowd asked him, how do we pick an investment advisor? And then Gauravji's quick advice was that if your advisor charges you a fee, then perhaps it is best to trust him, because if he doesn't charge you a fee, then he's taking it from somewhere else. So I was very interested in what Mr. Harsh Roongta's firm is called. It says Fee Only Investment Advisors LLP. So that's a very nice way of putting it, which means his commitment is to you and nobody else. He's also CEO of Apna Paisa, which was formerly known as apnaloan.com. A wide and deep involvement in the banking industry. He was with ICICI Bank for a very long time. He's also an entrepreneur, founded companies, has written so much. I was researching about him, and perhaps the most latest article that came out had a very telling anecdote about him climbing Duke's nose in Khandala. And that was a very, very telling anecdote. I've already stolen Amitji's thunder, so I don't want to steal Harshji's anecdote also. I'll leave that anecdote to him, and I'm sure, and we also downloadables towards the end of the seminar. There are booklets to be downloaded and so on, and questions that are usually not answered here or cannot be answered here for paucity of time. Rauji and his team are so committed that they usually answer it offline later. So please don't be disheartened if your question is not taken up. So I'll just hand over to Rauji, and may I wish you all a wonderful morning and an excellent weekend. Over to you, Rauji. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Matthew, sir, for such a wonderful introduction and with all the smiles in the morning. And it's great.
Thank you.
And I'm great to partner with the Harshji and Amitji today. And good morning, friends. Indeed, it's great to have each one of you. And thanks to the Team Week, the Manorama Group, which we always, we cherish that relations with them. This is our 10th episode, which is coming with them in the current financial year. That shows, it's working with the week, but month after month there is a session with us, and we prior to that we used to do so many on-ground events a year before, and look forward for the very next year again working with them very closely across the country to reach out to the audience in person. And trust each one of you are doing great. And Saturday morning, you made your time to join us, and it's great to show your interest to learn something and to understand. Of course, when it comes to the budgets, it's always a time for us. We always look forward for these union budgets so that we can look at what is in store for us, what is the next in store. But unfortunately or fortunately, it's a fact where I meet a lot of investors, and I know I asked this question on ground. You're all very keen. I mean, when Mr. Arun Jaitley was our finance minister, we were doing a program. I said, we are all very keen. I asked the audience, there were 1,000 odd. Everyone was raised, last 1 week, they are waiting for Arun Jaitley's budget. But I asked them, how many of you have your own annual budgets? Unfortunately, I have not got one hand raised. And that is the situation for us. And we are all looking at Nirmalaji's budget, but how many of us got our own family budget? I am not very sure. Today being a Saturday, after listening to our two experts, Harshji and Amitji, please go back and spend time tomorrow, take time to spend with your spouse and ensure that you have your family budget in place so that we don't depend on union budget, what to happen, but we can create our own budget, which can derive our life much better, and we can create our progressive life with a prospect, with a prosperous way of managing wealth. Keeping this short, I will have a quick 7 to 8 minutes of a presentation. After that, I'll give the forum to Harshji, where he will come with his rich experience on the taxation side. Of course, there were minimal changes in this year on the tax, but let us look at how that will impact. And broadly, let us not look what are the changes it has done now, but what changes we can make to our portfolios. And later we have a dialogue with Harshji and Amitji on how the markets can behave, what asset classes can we do, how we can rebalance our portfolios. Is there opportunity to rebalance? How we need to relook? There is a renewed optimism. Then how we can capitalize those optimism. Then we can. I'll quickly run on this presentation with you.
Happy.
Yeah, I think the music you're all hearing is happy, healthy, and wise, and that music is nothing but happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise. This is what this government and the finance minister made us to think: happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise. It is like it is focused on Atmanirbhar Bharat, and it is the Atmanirbhar Swasthi Bharat. That's where healthy, and the whole budget is wise spending. That is all leading us to the right way. And this budget is very special. It is not that but our life is always like a journey. We need to move on. And this budget of union budget, let us look over what is it has in store for us. And that budget too, let us go back to our budget. It's all today we are looking at on the personal finance. I think, Amit and me, we would have spoken to you many a times. In the personal finance, person comes before the finance. Means each of us need to handle our finance in a very different way. And it's in our own unique way. My goal is different from your goal, and your goal is different from your neighbor's goal. Then we need to focus on how we can go on. I think that's the most important, because you would have read many a times about this budget across in the last 1 week, and many channels you would have heard. We will focus less on the union budget, more on your budget today. And it's like I was remembering the first headlines which has come in the Economic Times, Swaminathan Ankleshwar Iyer, who has put it in the bold lines: the courageous and taboo breaking budgets. Let us also go back and be courageous, and let us have a taboo breaking budget of our own. And this budget is full on the big reforms, not only BIG, big reforms. B is a banking, I is the insurance, G is a growth. I think this budget, again, given a surprise to us. The biggest surprise is there are no taxes, no new taxes. And that is the no tax is a surprise, no tax is a big surprise. Probably we go back and see these budgets are going to uniformity. Year after year, we don't need to look at our taxes very differently, where we can plan our finances very differently. I think this is a budget converted the virus crisis into an opportunity. I mean, it's how this budget has shaped all of us very well. I think 2020 and 2021 scenario is changing. 2020, I think some of us, I think I am there in the industry for a little over 26, 27 years. Same is the Harsh Ji, and I mean, Amit Ji could be around 25 years of industry experience. And last year is 1 year we have seen, we had a privilege, or we had an opportunity, we had an anxiety to see. Normally we see a bull market for 3 years, bear market for few years. And no, but this time in the 12 months, we have seen in the we have seen the full bear market, we have seen the bull market. Means it's a very unusual. Means market cycles are changing faster, we need to adapt. 2020 was a year, it's a virus, but 2021 is a year of a vaccine. Means the pandemic that is converting into the hope. Lockdown to the reopening. New life is said to be normal. There is a new normal. We said we are going to the normal very differently, and we can plan. Recession to the recovery. And then there is a rally in the market. There is a rotation of the sectors in the market in 2021. How we can change this? And this is the government had two choices. You have an economic revival and controlling the fiscal deficit. When it comes to the crisis, sometimes we all come into the crisis. When I was just talking to a friend of mine who was into a credit card crisis. The guy borrowed so much and he has to pay. Now he is asking, can I go Nirmala way, not paying my credit card, and I can put on building my house? I said, better don't do that. First you need to repay all your loans. No debt is a great asset for all of us. DEBT for me, taking debt, DEBT is do not enter before thinking. I said, you first knock off your credit card, then you come back here building the house. Let us look at how we can look at. And who will spend? Now we all need to spend. But this government is helping us now. I think a lot of spending is coming from the government, where government has taboo breaking. That fiscal deficit has kept for some time. It doesn't bother, but we will focus on infrastructure. We spoke not on the revenue, but infrastructure growth. Capital expenditure. Now households will start earning more, and we can start spending. Then companies have started funding. It's most of the companies are gung-ho, and things are looking at, and it's a lot of action. And we will talk less of economics. But end of it, you have an option between revenue expenditure, you have an option between the capital expenditure. Government is wise enough to focus in the short term in the revenue, but long term the capital expenditure. What is this long term capital expenditure is giving to us? Like earlier, we would have seen the Atmanirbhar Bharat, or prior to that, the 5 trillion economy we were talking about. Now all that is going to come real. Then we need to look at this optimism, how it can come back to our portfolios. This I'm not going to cover. I mean, we will just leave it. But this budget has focused on the 6 pillars. It's health, financial capital, infrastructure, reinvigorating human capital, innovation and R&D, and minimum government and maximum governance. All this leading to the Atmanirbhar stuff. Someday somebody was talking to me, Nirmala ji's budget is true to her name, Nirmala ji, Nirmala. And Honorable Finance Minister, she has ensured that all her letters part of the budget, she's bringing that N is something but a newness and something is a nation first. Everything she has given is for the nation first, this budget. And our high stands for the infrastructure, innovation, and inclusive development. All eyes she has focused. And R, she has focused on reforms and reinvigorating human capital. And M, it's the first time I have seen over last 27, 28 years where I am part of reading the budgets very cautiously. One as a student preparing for the civil services to the till date we read that. It's the first time I'm talking about monetization of the assets, which we are always looking at. When I was in Indian Railways, then at that time we used to see so much of land is wasted. Why you are not utilizing it? This is the time it has come for us. And A is working entire budget is for making Indian aspirational Indian to be there, and it's the audacious goals. L, this budget is truly leading to the growth, and A is ending up with the Atmanirbhar Bharat. I think that's where Madam's budget, true to her name, and the highlights of the budget is the focus on the capital expenditure, and it's all that is leading to disinvestment to the minimum. This capital expenditure is leading the economy. I mean, now the consensus is we will grow next year at 12% of the GDP, and later of the decade, maybe 7 to 8% rest of the decades. That's where India is on the perfect growth path. I think my CIO, Manish Dangi says, we are at the glorious decade. This is a stepping stone for our glorious decade ahead. And what is in store? I mean, just we can, I think this Harshji is going to talk about on the individual taxation, about investment charter, to all that what we get. I'll leave it to Harshji. He'll be talking on taxation on the dividend. Before I hand over to Harshji, I would like to go back about the budget and Indian context. Earliest who spoke about the budget in Indian context is in Arthashastra, none other than Chanakya. And Chanakya says about the budget in a simple arithmetic, how you can divide your whatever you are earning into the 4 pockets. And if you are somebody is earning 100,000 rupees, 25 lakhs should be saved for the future needs, 25 lakhs for your personal incomes to be spent on personal needs, and 25% to the charity. If not 25%, even we can look at 10% to the charity. That could be a great thing to support the world, because world needs that, and a lot of people we need to support. And 25% of income used to be public and social causes. I think this is for the Raja to do it, but Praja as a one, I look at 50% of my money to be for my family and my requirement, 25% for my future, and 25% for my charity. Whichever the way this mathematics, but keep a mathematics which is suitable to you and work on your budget. That's the most important part. Don't confuse budget is nothing big thing, and go sit at home. You don't even need an Excel sheet. Take a piece of paper. What is your income and what is your expenditure? Your income is more or expenditure is more. And most of the time we save our money. Income minus expenditure is equal to savings, which will never happen. Because today in Indian festivals, we won't celebrate all the festivals. But Amazon India, Flipkart India will celebrate every festival, even without festival, because all the festivals happens there. Then income minus expenditure, your expenditure is always goes up. Just change the formula. Income minus expenditure is equal. Income minus savings is equal to expenditure, and that saving you convert into investments. That investments according to your financial goals. Then you get a right financial advisor to get that goals right, and then you are at home. That's where your budget can come. And prepare your spending plan, preparing your investment plan, put for your financial goals, keep some flexibility. And I think few sessions we spoke earlier about emergency fund, contingency fund. 2020 taught us contingency fund is the most important goal we should all keep aside, because we don't know when the next pandemic comes, when next crisis comes. Be prepared for it. We can't predict the crisis, but we need to prepare for those crises. That's where budget is important. I think Chanakya again said paying taxes are good for the country, but now I can say saving taxes is good for you. And that's where we have our Harshji is going to talk how you can save tax, not just saving the tax. Tax saving investments can become a route or roadmap to create your wealth. This morning, I was looking at one of the tax savings funds in India, which is started in 95. Somebody has invested 100,000. It is today 1 crore 69 lakhs. 169 times of your investments. If I have saved in 1995 for my ELSS 1 lakh rupees, I have not touched that. Today it is 1.69 crores. Imagine, in 1995, I bought my Maruti Zen, which is 5 lakh rupees, and I put 5 lakh rupees instead of Zen into this fund. Today, I would have got how much? It's a little over. It's a it's a how much? It's a 1 crore. I mean, 7.5, 8 crores. I would have got. Probably, I would have got my Ferrari plus that Ferrari to run for the lifetime fuel. I can put it in the account and withdraw the money. That's where tax saving can be good, and tax saving can become great for you, provided you stick to your assets. I think there's a power failure at my place. I'm not very sure. Uh, then then tax
We are
liability
able
is an
to
asset
hear.
or liability which you can look, and various taxes how you can look at very differently. You just work on it, and you have ATC. These things, RG is going to talk to us. End of it, my donation. You look at charity is a great way, and never look at tax planning is one-time exercise which you can do in January, February, and March. JFM is normally for all of us in the financial services. Is JFM is full months, but for you to plan your finances, you need to plan for April onwards. Let us look, and with this, I'll stop here and invite Harshji to take over presentation. And Harshji, all over to you, and we can take it forward.
Thank you, Mr. Rao, and thank you, Mr. Matthew, for reminding me of that hugely embarrassing moment. And I would take 2 minutes to share that with the people here, and why the most embarrassing moment in your life can teach you a very valuable lesson. To give that anecdote, I'm a avid trekker. I trek on weekends. Primarily in Bombay, we are blessed with having hills near us. So we were on this trek to Duke's Nose, and there are two routes to it. One of them is a slightly more difficult route, and me being me, we decided that we will take the more difficult route. And in that difficult route, there is one section, just one section, where there is a height of roughly about 10 feet. Those of you who have been there will recognize the part that I'm talking about. So it's 10 feet. There are handholds there, obviously. I mean, we don't carry ropes or anything. This is a plain, simple walking track. But this was a 10 feet height with handholds, but exposed. So, in retrospect, it appears mildly dangerous. At the time when I was doing it, in my inflamed imagination, it looked as if it was the end of my life. Somehow or the other, I climbed over it and went over at the ledge. Beautiful views of the valley, of the old Bombay Pune highway, etc. But in my fear-fueled imagination, all that I could think was fear. I had my cousin with me, who, being much younger than me, clambered up rather nonchalantly over that cliff. Now, I had done the difficult part, but I was so afraid that I said, I'm not going to move here. What if we come up with something similar later? So I don't want to move. So my cousin, very sensibly, is much younger than I am, very sensibly tells me, let's go ahead. Now there is no danger. Let's go ahead. If we come up to a point like that, we will not climb it. Unlike this time, we will not climb it. But to me, fear had completely overwhelmed me. And I said, no, I'm not moving from here. Fortunately, we had mobiles. So, we could call up people. There were rescue teams that came. And imagine how foolish I felt when the rescue team walked up from up. It was a very easy walk. I made them hold my hand to take me to the top. The point that I learned, I went back and did that same trek again to make sure that I could do trekking in my life. But the thing that I learned in that anecdote is, long after the thing that caused the fear has gone by, the fear still paralyzes you. And I think that is such a strong fear and greed. I think these are such strong human emotions that unless we understand those, you cannot control fear and greed. You just need to be able to understand them. I mean, I remember during this March, so if I relate it back to investments, during this March, I had one client who called me. He wanted to get out of everything. He had a huge deposit in his bank. I don't even want to name the bank. I mean, you will laugh. He actually asked me whether that bank was safe. So my point, and he was the CFO of a huge company. So my point to him was that if this bank is not safe, I think entire India is in trouble. I mean, of course you are in trouble, but entire India is in trouble. So my point is, fear is a very, very powerful emotion which can paralyze us, but we can use fear to our advantage as well. And I think those are some of the things that we need to know. Now let me move to the more prosaic subjects, like what is there in the budget for us. So this is going to be a quick presentation on some of the things that I have culled out. I think a lot of the major macro items are things that have already been. 1 minute. Does not seem to be there. So if one word I was to use for this budget, I think I would use the word promising. There are so many excellent things which are promised to us, and if all of those things are actually delivered, I think we will see a very different India from what we have all been accustomed to. And I think superlatives have been used for this budget, and I think it deserves it to a great extent. The only reservation I would have is that these promises ought to be delivered. So I'm picking up some of the items on relating to investors, and obviously some of the items relating to tax. So one, I think, was this 3-line paragraph in the finance minister's speech, where for the first time an investor has been acknowledged in the finance minister's speech, where she said that there will be an investment charter for investors across all financial products. I think this one sentence was something that was very important, underlying the importance of retail investors and the fact that now investors haven't really got the dues that they deserve. And I think this investment charter across all financial products, if it is enforced, I think, and if it is enforceable and it instills discipline in the market towards investor rights, I think the amount of investor confidence it will increase will be excellent for our markets. Obviously, this is not easy. I mean, the proposal for such an investment czar was made by the Sri Krishna Commission quite some time back. Will this be an independent consumer czar, independent of the existing regulators? If it is indeed independent, then obviously there will be turf issues with this regulator will have. How the government will solve that? What comes to mind is this US Bureau of Consumer Protection, which looks not just at grievance redressal. Grievance redressal is what shall I say? It's curative. It's after the illness has happened. After that, you give medicine to cure it. That's what a grievance redressal does. Whereas a structural investment charter ensures the problems don't happen in the first place. So it looks at the structural system rather than just plain simple grievance redressal. And obviously, in what kind of time frame this gets implemented. I think that really is extremely important. The other thing that she mentioned, about deposit insurance credit guarantee corporation streamlining the provisions so that the depositors of banks that have been put in moratorium can get access to that insurance money much faster. So we've not had any private bank failures since the 1960s, but a lot of cooperative banks have failed, and their getting access to the deposited funds has been an issue. And I think streamlining of the DICGC provision to provide for easy and time bound access to the deposit. If I have made an insurance for a certain eventuality, I should get my claim as soon as the eventuality happens, and I think that is quite a good thing to happen. Again, in the same vein, a single securities market code combining Security Contract Regulation Act, the SEBI Act, the Depositories Act, the various other acts all into a single code. And I think the finance minister has made it clear that this is not a change. What they're doing is that they are putting it in one place for ease of implementation. Again, SEBI has been appointed as the regulator for gold exchanges. I mean, we are, depending on the year, we are the first or the second largest importer of the gold in the world. I mean, and for this dubious honor, we compete with China. Among the other things, we compete with China for. Uh, and I think it is our wealth that is going out to South Africa, to Australia, etc. I think standardization and financialization of gold, it's already there. You have a sovereign gold bond scheme, you have a gold monetization scheme, hasn't been very successful. And I think this is a great step to make sure that the pace at which the financialization of gold happens, that pace gets quickened. Again, very important. She announced an institutional market maker for investments in investment grade market bonds. Now, a market maker basically provides two-way quotes, buy quote and sell quote, and therefore gives great liquidity in the market. And I think that is a real key for the market to take off. As if on cue, I think in yesterday's monetary policy, RBI announced that they would allow individuals to directly hold government securities in the RBI system. That was a major operational bottleneck, and I think removing that operational bottleneck has done is a great thing. That will not be alone be sufficient for making sure that people, retail people like you and me, will go out and buy and sell government securities. We will need to inject liquidity. There will need to be market makers who will give buy and sell quotes. But I think RBI also in the monetary policy yesterday, or probably the governor in his speech, announced that they are combining the ombudsman against across the entire spectrum of payment and settlement systems. So whether it is the banks, whether it is wallets, or whether it is any other prepaid kind of systems, across all of them, today, there are different ombudsmen. RBI is combining the ombudsman. I think the combined message is investor protection, promoting a retail investor's confidence in the market. And I think this kind of a coordinated effort is to be welcomed, because at last, I think the retail institutional investor who has done so much to keep the market up is getting his due. Of course, as I said, this is a very promising budget. and hopefully all these promises will be implemented as well. I just want to briefly touch upon this FDI percentage increase to 74%. Uh, we don't know whether it will happen. There is a lot of political opposition to that. But be that as it may, what this will do if it is allowed to happen is that will be a great boost for risk-based insurance. I think investment-based insurance products are already there, but a lot of the foreign insurance companies haven't bought their international portfolio of global risk-based products. And I think that will get a major boost if they are allowed to hold 74%, and we will get lots and lots of risk-based products. Most of those products would typically be industrial products, but I'm sure we will see some very interesting consumer facing risk products as well. Uh, I think all of you might have read in the papers how the car insurance industry is going to change, how we will pay car insurance based on the mileage that we consume, based on who in the family drives, etc., etc. Now, some reason why this is not coming is that we don't have the information in architecture or the information infrastructure to capture accurately the risks that are being taken. But some of these products have not also come because of the know-how that is required to evaluate these risks, and we should see some of these products coming to India as well. On the investment side, I think these two major tax changes, disallowing exemption on high value, high premium value ULIP products where the premium exceeds the 2.5 lakhs, as well as the high employee contribution to GPF and EPF. The GPF is Government Provident Fund, which the government servants pay, and the Employee Provident Fund is the other non-government sector employees pay. I think it is a positive. And I think the finance minister has come out with a detailed data disclosure on how a single person has got 103 crores as completely exempt interest or contribution in a PF with 8% tax-free interest. So I don't think that was the intention to provide this kind of interest. And I think the positive is that this lazy, I call this lazy investing simply because it is tax sheltered. I think slowly all the tax shelters are going away. Definitely, if you are a high net worth individual, you don't have new tax-free bonds coming into the market. I think these particular exemptions that are there are slowly going to go away. The next one to go away probably will be a traditional policy, etc. I think you would need to make active investment choices. In an excellent proposal, I think one of the things that they are doing for non-residents who have returned to India. Now, one issue that these non-residents faced was that, and particularly if you talk of the US, although this is not restricted to the US, you have a 401k account or a IRA account, which is basically a retirement account, where you are not taxed on the income accrual, but you will get taxed when you withdraw it or you redeem it, the money. When you come back to India, if you keep the money there, you are not paying any taxes in the US. But when you come to India and after a couple of years you become a resident in India, you start paying tax on your global income. And because India does not recognize that that account is tax exempt, that retirement account is tax exempt, on the accrual of the income, you pay tax in India in the year in which the income accrues in that account. And when you redeem, you pay tax, say in the US, let us say, and you don't get credit for the tax paid in India because it is not in the same year. Or in India, you don't get credit for the tax paid in the US. So you effectively end up paying double taxes. just a very quick run through. I think we can take them as questions and answers. Some questions that have arisen around, the high premium ULIPs, whether these cover only if one policy exceeds 2.5 lakhs, whether it is covered, or does it cover multiple policies? You cannot split them up and claim. So clearly it covers multiple policies also. But how each of these policies, which ones will be, said that these ones are falling within the exempt category, this one will not fall in the exempt category, all that is still to be determined, and rules will be coming out for that. Because the insurance companies will need to know, and especially if the multiple policies are from different insurance companies. So I think we will await rules for that. What will get taxed? It's only the accretion, the profits and gains that will get taxed. How those will be calculated, that is going to be prescribed. Clearly the long term period appears to be 3 years. It won't be 1 year, even though the ULIP fund itself may be an equity oriented fund. But this may not be material for ULIPs, because ULIPs are not allowed to be paid out before 5 years. The losses from this can be a loss as well. Will that loss be allowed to be set off? I think it should be allowed to be set off. uh, the equity funds within the ULIP, there could be equity, there could be non-equity. Equity funds will be taxed like any equity oriented fund at 10% without indexation. The short term gains, whether there will be short term gains in the equity oriented ULIP, we don't know. But that will be taxed as the normal income. It won't be taxed at 15%, because no corresponding change has been made in 111A, which allows the 15% rate. Any gains on the non-equity portion will get taxed like normal. So the long term will get taxed at 20%. After indexation, non-long term will get taxed at the normal rates. Hopefully, I think this will also solve a long festering debate on, what happens to the non-exempt insurance policies where the premiums are exceeding 10% of the sum assured. Hopefully, this will provide some solution. Whatever is prescribed for this section for ULIPs, we can perhaps take the logic forward for the non-exempt insurance policies also, and probably also for the NPS Tier 2 accounts. Uh, on the this thing, I think very clear, I already spoke. This was basically to discourage large contributions. How interest on interest will be calculated is something we will need to know. I think how it is displayed by the EPFO will need to change. And very importantly, what happens to employees today is that they contribute up to 12%. Now, if that 12% is more than 2.5 lakhs, will they be allowed to reduce it to 2.5 lakhs without affecting the employer's contribution? Please remember, employer's contribution up to 12% continues to remain, exempt from tax. So I think it will require changes in the way Provident Fund is administered. I think it is good, as I said, because lazy investing no longer will be possible. This I have already covered. Let me come to this, a provision for exemption from filing returns to senior citizens, above the age of 75 years. To me, this looks like a provision put in to earn some public relations brownie point, because it's almost impossible to, qualify for this particular section the way it is defined. An age greater than 75 years is easy, but this person needs to have a pension income. It has to be received in a bank that needs to be notified. Not all banks where you get pension income will be notified. And the only other income that person is allowed to qualify for this section is interest from that very same bank only. Uh, And even if he has 1 rupee from something else, let us say he's put some senior citizen savings scheme money in another bank, he has put PM Vay Vandana Yojana in another bank, he becomes ineligible for this particular exemption. Also, I think the commercials haven't really been, who's going to pay for this? The bank is supposed to take into account the declaration made by the taxpayer, deduct tax. Who will pay? Will the taxpayer pay? Because this is a lot of work for the bank. Will the government pay? Surely not. So, I don't know. I personally think unless this is changed, it could be a non-starter. One more thing I want to really point out is this pre-filled forms, and I think this is good. I think what has happened over the last years is that in your 26 AS, you are clearly given a lot of the information that the government has on you, and therefore you are able to fill your returns absolutely correctly. But it is not clear. They are saying they will calculate the capital gains for you. But how will they get your cost? What it has incurred? And if they get it wrong, then on the form, they have pre-filled the wrong data. Obviously, while filling the form, you will correct the data and put in correct data. But then that will make it, eligible for a scrutiny from the department. So this is not an unmixed blessing. Like all good things in life, there is some things that it might not really work out for you. But on the whole, as I said, the promise that has been made by this budget is immense. And even if a small portion of it gets implemented in the next year, I think we will see a lot of benefit for investors. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Harsh sir. And it's always great to listen to you and your detailed analysis. Always, it's insightful. I invite Amit also onto the stage, and I mean, friends, I think having heard Harsh sir, um, Amit is there. Yeah, Amit is back. I mean, like you have a lot of questions. I could see a lot of questions coming on the chat box. Please ensure to put your other questions on a Q&A or chat box. Both we will take it and we will get it addressed. And like as Harshji has said, this is a promising budget, but it's like definitely a very promising and very pragmatic, very proactive, and very progressive. And with this, I'll start the questions. Amit ji, the first question to you. Thank you so much for being here. This budget is two ways for us. Today we have Harsh ji and Amit ji. This budget has given Amit infinite opportunities, infinite prospects, and it is also harsh for everyone. It's all of us have something to be happy and cheered about. And union budget for the year 2021 being hailed one of the best, and that would bring back the economy on the growth path. What is your opinion? How do you see this budget?
I think, as you rightly covered in your presentation, sir, government had two choices: either to work towards reviving the growth of the economy, or control the fiscal deficit as per the FRBM Act, and the government chose the former. And in that process, now, in order to revive the economic growth, somebody has to spend money. Currently, thanks to the pandemic, households have cut back on some of the spending. Corporates are yet not, investing. So the largest constituent, which is the government in any economy, had to take that bold step and forget about FRBM for a while. And that's what they have done. I think markets have also cheered that. The moment the government took the fiscal deficit target off their head, they were able to take some bold steps without increasing the taxes. So I think that's something which is another good thing. So this is like a crisis, and the other day, like Harsh sir was mentioning, never waste a good crisis, and that's what the government has done.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Amitji, for it. And I'll move to Harsh sir. Harsh sir, it was wonderful presentation and it was very insightful. And you have raised right concerns. And these concerns have coming as a questions from our audience too. And as you rightly said, every good things you need to read the fine print and how it will counter. Now coming back, why should a common investor to follow the budget every year? I mean, common investor I'm talking about, and what that this budget specifically offers to the savers. I know you covered a lot on the taxes. I'll come back on the next questions on those taxes, some doubts, and but what is that it is offering to the savers?
So as I said, I think look at the overall environment for savers or investors. Whether these are people who put money in bank fixed deposits, whether they are people who like to invest in mutual funds, or whether they like to invest through insurance companies, etc. So I think the the investor confidence you will see across products. Okay. Uh, it has improved clearly over the last 20-30 years. As the regulation has moved, it has clearly improved. So whether it is mutual funds, I think mutual fund is an industry that we've been intimately associated with. Very clearly what mutual funds were in the late 90s versus what we are today. I think today the mutual fund industry is probably the most transparently run industry in the world. Okay, and I think we have to thank the regulator for that. Some of those might not suit us, but it still, I think, makes investor confidence in the industry higher. I think something similar has happened on the bank fixed deposit front, except for these, cooperative banks, and which is now being sought to be addressed. There is a large, shadow lenders, people where you want to take slightly higher interest rates, etc. I think an environment which makes sure that you know what your rights are, how you can enforce your right. I think that fosters increased savings, increased investments. And I think if, as I mentioned, some of these promises are actually translated, we are going to see an surge in retail participation, which will move. They are being invested or saved today, probably in the informal sector. I think it will start moving towards the formal sector. And I think that is that is a real gift. And I think very clearly the coordinated action that you have seen from finance minister as well as RBI, and I'm sure we will see it from other regulators as well. Clearly, I think that there is a clear understanding that the retail investor is the king. And I think that's a great place to be.
Absolutely great words. Retail investor is the king, and each of us need to look at this budget as not only promising, as Harshji said, it is also giving us environment where we can financialize our savings and invest. And some of us, we would have started, probably we would have ended up with only bank FDs. Now it's the time for us to look beyond and ensure allocating money to the risks that sets to, but taking those calculated risks. I think that we will dwell little later with Amit. But Amit, coming to you for the next question, I always ask this you on the personal finance. There are no changes in the income tax and budget, but there could be but it is not disappointed many people. Uh, there is a status quo on the taxation. But what is the personal finance lessons you feel we can draw from this budget? What are the key takeaways from the personal finance side?
So if I broadly look at the personal finance lesson, I think one thing to remember is this is the budget of Government of India. It's a statement of account presented in front of the Parliament, and it's not an individual family's statement of account. So our budget has to be very different from the union budget, and we have to take decisions based on our budget, which in turn is a function of our income, expenses, etc., our lifestyle choices, our financial goals, and based on that we prepare our own budget. The Government of India, as a part of, I mean, many countries do that as a part of an annual exercise. They present their own budget. One of the lessons that I would draw is, do we do that same exercise, budgeting exercise, for our family annually? And most of us don't. uh, do we really keep track of what is happening? And a lot of times people ask this question. Government of India always works on a deficit budget. Yeah, they can afford to do that because if government of India wants to borrow money, people would go and lend. If there's a deficit account, then government can print currency, no problems. People like us, you have to ensure that we work for a surplus budget so that our future needs are met. So some of these lessons are immense. But now coming specific to this particular budget, I think there are two lessons that I would really draw from this year. Number one is, uh, a lot of people have compared this budget with 1991 budget, and that was also a big reform, big bang budget. The difference between 91 and 2021 is that was a self goal that we had scored. It was our own problem that we had created, whereas this is an imported problem. It came in a tiny virus form, and infected the economy as well, apart from lungs. And in that case, what the government did was they focused internally, and the theme of the budget was also Atmanirbhar Bharat. So even when the problems are outside, you focus on your inward strength. Even in the pandemic, people talked about boosting the economy because there was no medicine available. Similarly, our personal finances also, if we take care of our finances in a form, and you earlier shows you talked about contingency funds and insurance to begin with, taking loans in a very careful and proper analyzed manner so that we don't go overboard. These are some of the things which allow us to boost our immune system and become Atmanirbhar. That's lesson number one. Lesson number two, when the chips were down, when the GDP growth is negative, first time in decades we've seen an inflation rate of 8%. And in that period, natural tendency is to cut down on spending, whereas government actually increased the spending, and that spending, they said, let us invest for the future. I think this is a big lesson. Go counter-cyclical. Even when you yourself are feared. Harsh shared a very, very powerful personal anecdote of fear and how it can freeze us. But also remember the same lesson in good times. When everything looks hunky-dory, don't overspend, because that time you will be planting the seeds for disaster if you go overboard in good times as well. So try to play counter-cyclical, and that should help you over a period of time.
Thank you so much, Amit, for that clarity. Harsh sir, I'm coming back to you. You spoke about PF, you spoke about ULIPs, and there are a lot of questions which are coming from the audience also on that. I think before I take those audience individual questions, the question for you is about what about PF, EPF, and VPF now? Should we stop doing voluntary contributions in excess of that? And the second question comes to you. Again, you spoke about ULIP. These are the two areas, the taxation which has come in. ULIPs now you don't have to, you do not have a tax-free benefits if it is a premium is about 2.5 lakhs. And what should I do with my existing ULIPs? One, I need to stop, or what should I do it?
I mean, some parts of this question are extremely simple. I mean, the ULIPs that are affected are only those ULIP policies that are issued on or after 1st February. Any policies issued before that would continue to be exempt if they were exempt earlier, which means primarily the premium should be less than 10% of the sum assured, or your sum assured should be 10 times your premium in any year. If that was true, it was exempt, and it would continue to remain exempt as long as the policy was issued before 1st February. As far as I think PF issue is concerned, I think there is a larger question around what does tax saving do? I think what tax saving does is it either enhances your return or it reduces your cost. If you get a deduction for paying health insurance premium, what it is doing, a part of that premium is being paid by the government of India effectively by giving you a reduction in your taxes. What does a tax saving do in ELSS you mentioned? What does it do? So you get the normal returns that 1 lakh became 1 crore 69 lakhs. Okay, that you mentioned, that was pure equity. That had nothing to do with tax. But what ELSS would have done is that you had not put in 1 lakh. You would have put in only probably 70,000, because 30,000 you would have got a rebate on tax. So your return was basically from 1 lakh that became, not from 1 lakh that became 169, it was basically 70,000 that became 169. Okay, so it enhances return. Coming to the then, therefore, answering the question of EPF, any investment you make, you need to plan. So you need to have, know what your goals are. You need to know what kind of risk you will take, what resources you have, and therefore decide how much to fixed income, how much to equity. So obviously, if you have been contributing to EPF or VPF, it has come from your fixed income category. Please remember, removing the tax exemption, the only thing it does is that it reduces your return. Now, instead of getting the 8 or 8.5% return, if you are paying taxes at 30%, your return becomes 5%. All that you need to evaluate is it a good fixed income investment at 5%? And take your decision accordingly.
Fabulous, sir. I think it's a amazing insight. Even I myself got it. Like, when somebody is looking at, when you give an analysis of 100,000, when you actual investment is roughly 70,000, 30,000. Otherwise, it has gone. That 30,000 as look at compounding growth. If I look at, not just look at the tax saving at that time, but I look at the wealth creation now. If I put on the Excel sheet, the wise decision one you take, how the wealth can be created. It's amazing. Sir, in this context, what are some of the things one should do when planning for the taxes now? I mean, for the next fiscal, should they stick to the same plan of the last year, or do you advise something different with your vast experience?
So I think planning for your taxes is part of planning for your budget. As I think Amit says, right? It is, you need to plan for the budget. Planning for your tax is only a small part of that. Obviously, when you plan for your taxes, it enhances your return. If you have chosen fixed income, it will enhance your return on fixed income. If you have chosen equity, it will enhance your returns on equity. Or I mean, on expenses, right? It reduces your expense. So to that much extent, it makes more money available for investments. So obviously, you should optimize your tax saving. But for example, I have clients who say, I'm going to buy a house. Oh, why do you want to buy a house? He says, I'm letting go of this 2 lakh, deduction for interest. Now, look at this. You giving uh, 2 lakhs interest. What does the tax saving on that do? It reduces the outflow from 2 lakhs to maybe 1,30,000. There is still an outflow, right? So you need to know whether that house is making sense as an investment. It's a pure investment. This is not a house to stay in. Whether that 130, which works out to 5%, whether it is worth borrowing at 5% net of tax. So I think tax saving for tax saving's sake, okay, is an exercise in futility, and it should never be done. I think you need to plan on an overall basis. Within that overall plan, I think tax saving is a component. We must not make the mistake of making tax saving the tail that wags the your full budget.
Great, sir. But one thing I would like to add
just to
in.
add to
Yeah,
yeah,
go ahead,
sorry,
go ahead.
just to add to what Harsh sir was mentioning. Incidentally, I know many people who have bought life insurance policies for the purpose of saving tax and not to get the risk cover. And in that process, in one of the conversations in one of the articles I had written, that India has turned out to be a nation of underinsured tax savers. So people have saved tax, but we are still underinsured.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Unfortunate part, I recall, I think when Matthew was talking about Gaurav Bhai, I mean, I can recall one of the programs when we went with Gaurav Bhai. Gaurav Bhai was telling it's happened in Kochi only, and Lord Yama decided to take Indians only in during January, February, and March, because highest number of insurance policies were bought during that period.
Yeah, if I may add to what Amit is saying, I think people who sell it also sell it that way. Like Rauji said, in January, February, March, when they sell, they come and say you can save tax. They don't talk about the cover part; they talk about the tax saving part. So, Yeah,
But
that's always
all said
there.
and done, all said and done, Mr. Matthew, there is one thing has happened. Thanks to this tax saving instruments, thanks to this, Indians, we all got inculcated the habit of savings. Otherwise, we would have become
Absolutely.
spenders. Let us respect
Absolutely.
that as a big premise. Now, coming back to the
Absolutely.
True.
markets, I think a lot of questions comes on the markets now. Amit ji, this is a question to you. In the current, the markets have been wholeheartedly welcome the budget, and as of now, it is over 4,000 and 4,000 odd points up over the last 1 week after the budget, and this budget announcement has cheered the market. But how do you look at this sharp surge in equity markets? What is your advice to the investors now?
So in the previous shows, we discussed about how the equity markets apparently is behaving irrationally. So in March 2020, when we had 600 cases, Sensex hit the bottom at around 25,000 points. And by the end of the year, or let's say currently, when we are at all-time peak, the total number of cases has already crossed 1 crore. So at 600 cases, the market hits bottom, and at 1 crore cases, it hits the peak. But the reality is equity markets are not looking at current facts only. They are looking at what is likely to happen. So equity market typically tries to discount what is likely to happen in future. Now this what is likely to happen is critical. It's the combined opinion of all the players present in the market. Now, whether the opinion is right or wrong is a different discussion altogether. But the collective opinion comes in the price. Currently, with the announcement of vaccine and so many shots have already been administered across the world, I think that also has helped in cheering the market. The January GST collections also are indicating that we could be on a path to recovery. Uh, and then overall, if you see the belief is becoming stronger that we seem to have built what is called the herd immunity, that the number of cases are not growing very fast and the recovery rate is remarkably high. So these all these things put together, and then the pleasant budget announcements, especially one of the fears that people had was that the taxes would go up. The so-called COVID cess was also being discussed, and no such things came. Equity markets seem to have cheered all that. Having said that, if we look at the other two markets, which is currency and bond markets, they don't seem to be so cheerful because the fiscal deficit is going up. So one has to take a look through a holistic picture rather than only looking at what equity market is doing.
The follow-up question to you, Amit ji, is in this current market scenario, as you explained now, how one should approach their equity markets? Is that equity is a preferred investment avenue now, or equity returns change after the budget, or people need to allocate more to the equity? What do you suggest?
Uh, so equity allocation again should be a function of one's individual situation and preferences. And within those preferences, I would also include the ability to take risk and the appetite. But should you increase the allocation to equity because the market has gone up? That's like looking externally and deciding what to do. We don't really do it that way. So let's say if you and I go for a vacation in the hills, you may put two less woolen clothes compared to me if my body is unable to withstand the kind of cold. So while the weather is expected to be cold, we take the clothes as per our own requirements. Let's and Matthew sir would. He actually reminded me that you to bring in Bollywood and cricket, so I'll bring in cricket, Matthew sir now. In the test match that we won against Australia, the fourth test match, Cheteshwar Pujara and Rishabh Pant both batted brilliantly, but diametrically opposite approach. One batted like a T20, and the other batted like he was actually playing a 50-day match rather than a 5-day match. But that was required. And that's how the equity allocation has to be seen. Rishabh Pant was heavy on equity. Pujara was heavy on fixed income, if I were to take that analogy. Look at your own situation, look at your own strengths, and then decide the allocation. There is no set formula. However, there is one thing that can be seen is called the rebalancing of the portfolio allocation. And whenever one asset class goes higher than the percentage allocation of your portfolio, you need to pare it down. And please remember, I'm talking about percentage allocation. And this percentage term seems to be a little complicated for a lot of people, because people have given comparisons like 100 to 25,000 took so many years and 25,000 to 50,000 took only so many years. Yeah, 100 to 25,000 versus 25 to 50,000. I mean, look at the percentage growth. And if you understand that, then look at the percentage growth. If your equity allocation was supposed to be 40%, it's gone to 45%, cut down 5% from equity and shift it to fixed income. That's called rebalancing. And in all rising markets, you would be booking a little bit of profit. In all falling equity markets, you'll be buying some equity. And that's the wise thing to do.
Thank you so much, Amitji, for that. One nice analogy of woolen clothing, and I really agree. And I go back to Harsh sir, because he advises many investors. Many such cases should have come. And taking the clue from what Amitji said, now equity market is at all-time high. My portfolio may be looking towards, tilted too much towards the equity, and my asset allocation would have gone like in favor of equity now. And in this scenario, what you advise investors? Should the investor need to look at changing the portfolio after the budget, or only rebalance it? What do you advise for your investors, similarly to our audience?
So let me infringe Amit Bhai's copyright and bring in cricket as well. Okay. So if Rishabh Pant has hit, he did that sitting reverse sweep and, scored a 4. By that time, of course, we were pretty close to victory. But my point is, if you've scored well, then obviously the captain sends in somebody, or the batsman on the other side goes and says, hey, we've done all the hard work. Now let's take it easy. We can, just putter around and make sure that we win, because the main objective is to reach your goal. So the point is, this is paring down, right? You cool down. You scored well, you now cool down. And this is the whole concept of asset allocation, that based on your goals, based on your resource availability, you have decided an asset allocation. If that goes higher, then you pare it down. And one great innovation, I think, that the mutual fund industry has bought into this is this whole concept of dynamic equity fund, balanced advantage funds, okay, where they have pre-decided formulas for, the combination of equity and debt, or equity and fixed income. And that's formula based, that is not based on the fund manager's view. So the percentages are free from human bias. I mean, fund managers, even extremely smart fund managers, are all human beings at the end of the day, and they are subject to the same biases, same herd mentality as the rest of humans. And therefore, deciding that by formula is extremely important, and it is automatically counter-cyclical. As Amit Bhai said, that it needs to be counter-cyclical. Same, that balanced advantage funds or the dynamic equity funds by definition are counter-cyclical. When equity is doing well, they are forced to sell equity and invest in fixed income. When equities are doing badly, they are forced to sell fixed income and move into equity. And I think a certain allocation, so certain part of your equity allocation, especially at times like this, when there is a fire in the market, okay, you might want to shift a certain part of your equity allocation to such a dynamic or a balanced advantage allocation in order to cool it down. It's very equivalent of the captain sending in a request saying, "Do chakke maar liye, now cool down."
Fantastic analogy. I think, awesome. India will always go with a cricket and Bollywood, and it's good. Friends, I think, it's a message is very clear. When you are rebalancing, to make sure that you have a right asset allocation. And mutual funds always comes with an innovation of devising these formulas, which we can make your ease of investments. Right now, it's a balanced advantage funds can be a great option to look at, to cool down and make things and no emotion. And you capitalize on whatever the opportunities available. And also addendum which has come from the Harshji, who is a right advisor. Getting the right advisors is always a right thing to get at the right time. And now I'll shift the focus, Amit ji, before we take the questions from the people. Now, all said and done, it's fantastic. Now, you said about the debt markets. Now, there is a fear of inflation. What happens to inflation after this budget? And people are little concerned about it, though yesterday RBI made sure that it will be in the range of 5 to 5.2 is that's where the benchmark is looking like. But do you feel inflationary pressures will come, and how it will impact?
So, incidentally, inflation is closely linked to the fiscal deficit. So long as the fiscal deficit goes up, we can expect the inflation to inch up as well. Having said that, there are a few measures which can be taken in order to cut down the inflation. Take for example some of the bottlenecks which we always have in terms of transportation. So if the highways are done, but that takes a period of time. But yes, in the short term, with the fiscal deficit moving up, inflation should be expected to inch up as well. But at the same time, what also happens is when we look at inflation in the personal finance terms, it has to be seen holistically. So while the costs do go up, even the income also gets inflated in a lot of cases. For example, salary increments also happen more or less in line with inflation. So inflation as such may not be a big worry if you are able to manage your finances well. So the only thing actually we can control is the expense part and not so much the income part. Whereas the focus typically shifts on the income part rather than the expense part. I mean, today morning, I just got a message from one of the malls that for this weekend, they've got some great offers. So both my wife and I decided to, reduce our savings this time, because if we go in normal times, we would have saved. If we don't go in normal times, we would have saved more. Today, because there's a discount, by not going there, we would save less. That's all we do, right? So that's how you operate. Just because there is a discount in the Amazon festival that you're talking about, yeah, celebrate at home. These are days of work from home. So inflation as such, the government published numbers and our numbers are also going to be very different. So I'll come back to that, the Atmanirbhar.
Thank you so much, sir. I think, I'll start taking questions from the audience, and friends, I think please use Q&A box for so many questions. I mean, all the questions, that would be nice. And in the meanwhile, right now, I'm taking some of the questions you put it in the chat box. Some interesting questions which have come in, and this question, Harshji, it will go to you. I think there is an investment charter which we spoke about. There is a question from Pooja Jawar, and she's asking, what is an investment charter? How it will help investor and other related bodies?
So an investment charter, let me give you an example. I think today it is widespread, and there was this joke going around in WhatsApp that there is this man going into a bank to deposit funds, and he brandishes a gun and says, here is a warning. I have only come to deposit cash. Don't sell me any life insurance policies, anything else. I've just come to deposit cash in my account. Now, this, I think, widespread misselling by the very institution that you trust. I think trust is the foundation of a good investor, and investors trust their banks. And if banks are misusing that trust to missell, we had a shocking example okay, we will not talk about all those examples. My point is, those are well known. Now, if there is a clearly laid down rights that, you cannot be sold things like this, products need to be transparent. There cannot be conditions in the product that effectively make them unusable for you. So if you have an insurance policy, okay, which say protects you from disease X, okay, but there is a proviso to that, much like income tax has provisos, there is a proviso to that that makes it almost 90% of the people won't be able to get it. Now, disallowing that kind of a structure, I think is, so people feel confident that when I'm buying something, when I'm investing in something, I won't be sold a dud. If I'm sold something that I was not aware about, I will have ability to get redressal. That redressal will happen in a time-bound manner, and there is this agency that will make sure that if these kind of complaints are ongoing, then it cannot happen. It will not be allowed to happen. The product itself will need to change. So I think that kind of an assurance is what comes from a well enforced investment charter, and it can do wonders to the investment climate in the country.
Fabulous, sir. I think, as earlier you said, our regulator has done a lot of work for in the favor of investors. Sometimes some of us may or may not like, but his focus is always investor. And this is government again come back with a charter. It's a great move. Amit ji, I'm coming to you with a question. This is coming from Mr. Vikas Patel. And this is to the markets, all market questions to you and investor questions to Harsh there. And it is because you have written the books called Roller Coaster Ride. I always believe when market was down, I will be on the bottom of the roller coaster ride. When market is up, I am on the roller coaster ride. However, it's a roller coaster ride. Mr. Vikas Patel is asking, it is being said that in India will be the third largest economy sooner or later, and by end of this decade. I want to know what will be the trajectory of the Nifty growth. Can you project something?
So first,
can I answer that? Sorry.
Oh, please,
okay.
please, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
it will be 1 lakh. I just don't know when.
Then fantastic.
Back to you. Back to you. Sorry.
No, great answers. I was about to say that while the economy may become the third largest very soon, don't expect Nifty to be the third largest index very soon. Don't derive that kind of a correlation. But having said that, generally it is believed that over long periods. Now, please again don't ask me the definition of long. It's exactly the date that Harsh sir mentioned. That's the long term. Over a long term, the stock prices typically tend to follow the profit growth trajectory of the respective companies. The key words are long term, number one, and number two, profit growth trajectory, whereas the economies are measured in terms of GDP, and GDP is the gross consumption or gross production. It is not profits. Okay, whereas stock markets are related to the profit that the companies make. Now, having said that, how much of the stock markets account for the real economy has also to be seen. We still have a significantly large part of the economy which is not represented by the stock markets directly. So will there be a disconnect there? Yes, there can be a disconnect, but generally, directionally, if the economy continues to grow like this, then indices have nowhere but to go up. But there will be tremendous ups and downs along the way. So be prepared for that, gut-wrenching roller coaster ride, and only then invest. And without asking me what long-term means.
Fantastic. Thank you for both of you for giving that promising and optimistic note, as well as caution there. There is a volatility there. I mean, there is a volatility, there is a consolidation, everything happens. And equity markets, when it is up, we will not look at the risks. And we all need to look at one thing. There will be a low returns, there will be a no returns, there will be high returns. Be prepared for it and stay on the, you need to stay your investment and trajectory. All that what I need to do is what is under my control, staying invested all the times. If somebody has missed it last 5 days, the best of this year, 5 days would have gone also. We don't know who said that. And here is a question coming to you, Harsh sir. This is coming from Binod Bihari. Namaste sir. My question is it necessary to have an agent while investing our money? Do you have some other means? Can you please enrich me?
So I think I would use that word agent as in I would use it in a wider sense, and I think this is a great question, by the way. Okay, and it gives a chance to explain the name of the firm and why did we do this in this manner. So I will use that word agent as an advisor, as somebody who advises you. An agent is typically a very narrow term that says just helps you. You decide what to do, and he just helps you execute that. That's what an agent does. Okay, whereas an advisor actually helps you devise a plan based on what you want to achieve, what kind of risk profile you have, what resources you have, and therefore devise a plan, right? So I think I think every person, okay, needs an advisor, including me, because as they say, even the best doctor in the world will not operate on people that he is close to because he's not objective. So I think you need a third party advisor who has objective considerations, who is able to, every investment involves a trade-off, right? Every investment, there are only three parameters. You can reduce every single investment in the world, the most complex investment in the world, to three parameters: risk, return, liquidity. Okay. And I think looking at that trade-offs and those trade-offs in the context of your needs, that's what an advisor does for you. Ultimately, the decision is yours. The advisor's job is to point out the trade-offs to you and make sure that you are taking a conscious decision. I think most of us do this trade-off in our mind, but we don't really take a conscious decision. And the advisor's job is to make sure. So, I mean, simplest example in terms of goals, most people will provide for goals that are going to come up in the next 2-3 years. I think most of us plan for that, but most of us will not plan for the fact that 30 years from now, I'm no longer going to be earning. And therefore, I need to. So, invariably, although that goal might be more important than a small little goal that you might have set up 3 years from now, your money will get allocated to the goal that's coming first. So I think what an advisor does is make sure that when you allocate, sure, allocate it to this 3-year goal, but please remember, you're taking a trade-off against your 30-year goal. I think this big picture, the 30,000 feet picture, going down to 10,000, going down to 5,000, that's what an advisor does. And I think that kind of an advisor everybody needs.
What you need.
Then comes the question of how will you remunerate that advisor? Because nobody is going to do that for free. Now, according to us, and obviously that we have chosen that path, the advisor is giving you a service, and in order to retain his objectivity, the advisor should be making money from you, not from the products that he sells. Because moment he makes money from the products that he sells, uh, even a very professional advisor, there is nothing wrong with commissions. I want to emphasize that. And there are, we all started our lives as commission based agents. So there was nothing, we were very professional at that time as well. The issue with commissions is that in black and white, things which are black and white, I think a good advisor will always go towards the side of white. But unfortunately, most decisions are
Great.
And when decisions are gray, obviously an advisor tends. So just think, commissions on equity, I mean, mutual funds itself, as you are aware, in mutual funds itself, on equity, my commissions would be high. On debt, my commissions would be low. Now, where the goal is 1 year away, there is no question. It has to go to debt no matter what your risk profile is. But suppose your goal is 5-6 years away, your risk profile is balanced. What do I do? Okay. Now this is a gray area. Obviously, even though I may be very professional, I may not be doing it in the greed of getting more commission. My mind will tend towards the product that has a higher commission. This bias, even for a professional advisor, is completely removed when this money comes from the client or the investor or herself. And I think every professional likes to be treated as a professional, and somehow, although there is nothing wrong with getting a commission, somehow getting a fee from the client somehow sounds more professional, gives more satisfaction than getting an equivalent amount of commission from the product manufacturer. And I'm again making it clear, this is without any disrespect to the commission based practice that all of us have done.
Fantastic, sir. It's such a wonderful clarity around it as always. Hope, Mr. Binod Bihari, it has been clarified to you. I mean, but you have asked, do you have some other means? You have an option to go invest directly, but choice is yours. But it's as Mr. Harshji has rightly put it. Now we have two kinds of advisors in the country. You have a mutual fund distributors, and you have a registered investment advisors. You can choose anyone, or you can go direct as per your convenience. But all said and done, let me give you my own experience. For now, I have my own advisors. Simple reason: when I have seen such a bear market and such a bull market, having seen, however, I am this side of the world, but when it comes to your money, you always feel shaky. And that as one advisor has helped me to stay hooked to my Asta allocation, so that during the fall, I was not less worried, and during the rise, I am not much greed. Both sides feel fear and greed managed by my advisor. And in fact, agent, I always used to call, I mean, though with the word we have mentally have put it in a very different, agents are always agents of the change, agents of the growth. There is a positive connotation too. They are aiding gently to you to reach your goals. That's where I look at, that's, and Amit ji, this question to you. This is coming from, in fact, he's also a friend of mine. Actually, I know him. He's a scientist from Department of Atomic Energy who is retired. Mr. Shanti Kumar. He has written very nicely. I am 69 and I have been taking Aditya Birla mutual funds and most of it, and also Bank of Ds. In fact, I was looking for a bigger apartment, but not so immediately. So can you suggest some safe high earning investments? And he has also put one more question. Is it gold coins or bonds are right now?
So, okay, it's a great question. I think it's going to help a lot of people because the two words safe and high earning, if they coexist in the investment world, then we don't even need this conference. These two words don't coexist. So if it is safe, it is not high earning. If it is high earning, it's not safe. Let's accept that. And given that, what you need is some instruments or investment vehicles which offer safety to your portfolio and some which allow you to earn high returns. And what should be the mix between the two is entirely a function of your unique situation and your own needs. So that's you can't really get it at one place. You have to collect it together and put it together. I mean, it's again. Can I ask Cheteshwar Pujara to open the bowling for India? I mean, he is a great batsman. He can't bowl, so you need a Bumrah for that, and you need a Pujara for batting. Similarly, in a portfolio, there's nothing called safe and high earning both.
Thank you so much, sir. And hope Shanti Kumar Garu, it has been clarified to you. And if there is anything I can drive offline too. And this is a question coming from Mr. Karanam Prabhakar Rao. This question I am asking to Harsh sir. More than 2.5 lakh contribution to the EPF interest is taxable. And how it can happen, can you explain? Of course, you have said in the presentation. Would you like to narrate something more on that?
So I have not fully understood the question, but I mean, assume if your income is, let us say, 3 lakhs, basic, I'm assuming basic. Let's forget all other allowances. If you're a government servant, then basic plus DA. If you are in the any other sector, then just basic. If that is 3 lakhs, then 12% of that you contribute, 12% your employer contributes, right? So what you contribute on the 3 lakhs is 36,000. 3 lakhs, 12% is 36,000, right? You contribute that every month. That effectively is much more than 2.5 lakhs in a year. Now, whatever portion exceeds 2.5 lakhs, on that part, whatever interest accrues, in that first year, again, that will not be exempt. You'll have to pay tax on it. It's not clear now at what point you will pay the tax. It's not clear. It's no longer exempt. It's not clear whether you will pay the tax in that year. I suspect that's what the government wants, that they want you to pay the tax. Whether it will be deducted at source, now there is a provision for deduction of tax at source in Schedule 4, but I mean, the language does not seem to suggest that it can be on. The language seems to suggest it is on redemption. But I think those can probably be changed. So on the first year, whatever interest accrues over and above the contribution of 2.5 lakhs, that will get taxed in that year itself. That's very clear. Next year, again, on whatever you make more than 2.5 lakhs, that year's interest in excess will get taxed. Not just that, the interest that got taxed in the first year, there is interest on that. Even that will get taxed in the second year. So it's very clear. If you want exempt, it just has to be limited to 2.5. Anything you do above that, whether it is interest on that or interest on that, it's going to be taxed, and it's going to be taxed in the year of accrual.
Thank you so much, sir. I think, but it's going to be a very complicated one. It looks simple, but it's very complicated. I'm sure. Let us see what will happen when the final bill is passed, and then we can have one more debate. And at that time, we'll ask Harsh sir to detail us what else we can do differently. We will have Harsh sir in the panel to advise us. And this is a question to you, Amitji, coming from Rashmi. I mean, this is on the NPS. Or I'll go back to Harsh sir only on the NPS again. Is and Harsh sir, this is a question. Please advise whether I should invest in tier 1 or tier 2, get the 50,000 benefit under NPS, and also help me explain how the whole NPS works.
Okay, that's very, very important question that he has raised. I think NPS Tier 2 is nothing but a mutual fund. Okay, a non-ELSS mutual fund. So there is no tax benefits at all attached to NPS Tier 2. So why should you do NPS Tier 2? I think NPS is a low-cost mutual fund. The cost is really low. And those people who are attracted by the low cost, okay, I am definitely not recommending, because I think there is a saying in the legal profession, okay, that a cheap lawyer is the most expensive lawyer on earth. Okay, I think something similar applies to mutual funds. I mean, what are you investing in a mutual fund for? Are you investing because it is low cost, or are you investing because net of cost you want a return, an optimized return? So I don't think you need to invest in a mutual fund just because it is low cost. And that is what NPS Tier 2 is. So NPS Tier 2, definitely not recommended by me. I mean, I'm being extremely categorical. As far as NPS itself is concerned, I think this is a excellent scheme, primarily earlier designed for the government servants, because if you remember, these were unfunded provisions. I mean, even today, the government pays pension year after year. It is only in that year that the provision is made in the budget. Now, from 2004 onwards, the government puts it into an account, NPS account, and any pension will have to come out of that. Whatever that is able to give, that will be the pension you will get. So there is no future liability on the government. Whatever liability is there, it is there in that year and it is contributed. And something similar is allowed for the private sector. In consideration of this, there is exclusive tax benefits for the NPS. The exclusive tax benefit is up to 10% of your basic in the case of private sector employees, or 10% of the basic plus DA in the case of government employees, without any limit, is allowed on a tax exempt basis to be contributed to the NPS, and your own contribution over and above other 80C contributions, an exclusive limit of 50,000 is there for all government or private sector employees. To the extent of the exclusive limit, it is highly advised to everybody. But again, as I'm saying, beyond the exclusive limit, I don't think NPS is a great option, simply because I think the levels of transparency, etc., that the mutual fund, what is it? NPS is a mutual fund, but the levels of transparency that a mutual fund that is there regulated and that's just not there in NPS as yet. I think as and when it comes up, that opinion might change. But as of today, use NPS Tier 1 to the extent of the exclusive tax benefits available for it.
Thank you so much for such a detailed answer, sir. Thank you. And Amitji, this is a very question. I mean, you can answer whichever with the way wisdom. I mean, this question is coming from Mr. Hemant Kumar from Allahabad, and he's asking that can you please advise me a single best investment plan for common purposes, where for the family of 4 members, not much of financial details, but self spouse and two career, the 2 daughters who are having their own work, their professionals.
So I have a couple of doctor friends, and I went to them and asked, please prescribe me one single medicine for all the common illnesses. And the doctor asked me, sorry, nothing such exists. So I think the same answer applies in this case also. Each situation, each requirement is going to be very, very different. Even when you mention that it's a family of 4, 2 families of 4 members also will have very, very different requirements. Even if you say that the husband and wife are in the 40s and kids are in school teenagers, then also the 2 families may have vastly different requirements. So is there an answer that is there a solution that can be given to all? No, that no such thing exists.
Probably, Amitji, I understand from the other way also for him. Probably, if I have to make one investment simple and it can create an asset allocation kind of it, and there is one goal. I mean, if there is only long-term investment, and since he is from NMDC, which is it's a quasi-government organization where you have a pension and everything. Maybe your balanced advantage funds kind of it, as suggested by Hatch sir earlier, or balanced fund, or a little bit of equity exposure kind of. Earlier we used to call MIPs, but now we call hybrid funds. Could be a choice, but I personally feel, sir, you can just connect to some of the advisors at Allahabad, or you can browse on the web so that you get clarity. That would be always better. It is not right for us to advise anything on this. And even you can visit our website, you can get some navigation, you get some clarity. Then after that, you can make an investment choice of yours. And this is an interesting question coming to you, sir. It is on Mr. Subramaniam Seturaman is asking. It is due to does digital currency of the government plans to introduce will affect the security markets in terms of liquidity? And
I frankly do not understand. I mean, when the frenzy on bitcoins was very high, it still is reasonably high, with worthies like Elon Musk and everybody piling on. I think the technology itself is mind blowing. So the blockchain technology itself is something that's going to change the way we live our lives. The currency based on that, I have much less understanding. In fact, I have almost zero understanding of. And one thing is that I think currencies require some kind of statutory backing for it to become acceptable. I think digital currency is going from a space that, why should governments decide, what you do with your money, how you do it. I think that's going to be difficult. So to that much extent, a digital currency backed by the governments, which is now something that almost every government is thinking about. I think that has some scope conceptually, but to be very, very frank, it is not something that I understand very well.
thank you so much, sir. I think, I will put some of these questions on the rapid fire to you now. I mean, because there are a lot of questions. I'm sure it is, hope, Matthew, sir, we are on time, we are ahead of time, or we are short of time.
So I think we have another 15 minutes at least, sir.
Yeah, then I have a little more than 35, 40 questions. Another 35, 40 questions are there. Some rapid fire and some questions I choose not to answer. Friends, please do excuse me, because which is not really not make lot of relevance to answer on this forum. or with our guests who can, it is not required where you can get the answer elsewhere too. And this question coming from Mr. Karnam Prabhakar Rao, he says, due to pandemic, government made some changes in the claim to leave travel allowance, LTA tax exempt. Can you explain and how it works? This over to you, Harsh, sir, again.
So I won't claim to have studied this in detail, but this was announced in way back in September,
August,
October,
September.
where you could not use avail of LTC because of travel restrictions. Instead of that, you could spend the money and still claim the exemption. I think that was the broad provision. What the finance bill has done is just put that provision and recognized it with backdated effect. So I think it is an excellent provision. It was done at that time to promote spending. So I think it
Yeah.
is an excellent provision.
Yeah, adding to what you said, sir, I also broadly recall what I read is you need to invest 3x of it. For example, if your 50,000 is LTC, you have to put 1,50,000, and you need to pay on that investments, whatever buying, whatever purchase goods you have, you are supposed to pay 12% GST on that, so that you get this exemption. That's a way it's enabling you to spend, and you pay the GST, though you get away. It's a wonderful option to look at. And here is a question coming from Seena Rajan to you again, to Harsh sir, to you. Hi, it's a great discussion. Thanks, Seena ji, for the compliments. I want to know whether ULIP is better or a combination of mutual fund and term insurance.
So my views have been very, very clear. It is like you need both. So there is no uh, alternative to pure insurance. I mean, that only an insurance company can give you. Okay, or let me again infringe on Amit's, copyright and use. You need pads, right? The pads restrict your movement, but yet and it slows you down when you are running between the wickets. But no good cricketer will ever bat without pads, right? And you need a bat, right, to be able to bat. Now, why would you want to buy something that will double up as a pad and a bat? Okay, I think better buy your pads that work like pads, and better buy your bat separately that work like a bat. Buying the two together, in my opinion, makes very little sense and should not be done.
Thank you so much, sir. I think, Amit ji, it's a long time. I need to trouble you a little more. And here is a question coming from Samir Kumar Patnaik.
Sure, sir.
Contingency fund, your favorite subject again. Contingency fund, should I invest in equity or debt?
Neither. It should be in liquid funds.
Wow, fantastic. That's a
let's understand. There are primarily, when we evaluate any investments, we look at safety, liquidity, and returns. So safety primarily comes from debt instruments, liquidity comes from liquid funds, and returns you target to achieve from equity portfolio. So broadly, but debt funds are also more volatile than liquid funds. So please keep your contingency funds only in liquid funds.
Yeah. No, but Amit, I would like to add a little more. I mean, thanks to a lot, 10 sessions over a period of time we did, and we spoke many times on the contingency. And during the COVID, we thought, why should not we increase the contingency fund to a little higher level, 6 months to 9 months, or 9 months to 12 months.
Yeah.
But somebody is having the money which is more than 12 months, and that contingency is not required. Probably you can plan for the long term. That's fine. And which I would have done. And here is one question coming from Mr. Veera Senthil Kumar Raj. This is, I am asking Harsh sir. He says, every month I am paying nearly 50% of the EMI in addition to monthly EMI towards my house loan repayment, and 100%, that is 100% EMI plus 50% EMI additional payment. And my tax savings under income oblique loss from the house property is getting reduced. But I am getting a satisfaction that my loan capital is getting reduced quickly than it was framed. Am I right? What do you suggest?
So one quick suggestion, since it's a rapid fire round, is that instead of doing it like this in a normal loan, he would be well advised to take what is called an offset loan. That's been made famous by SBI. They call it max gain, where against the loan there is a linked savings or a current account. The advantage of that is all this prepayment that he is making, he will get the same benefits, that his interest cost will come down, with an additional benefit that should he need the liquidity, he can withdraw. And because it is a account, even temporary monies, even monies he has for 1 day or 2 days, he can keep it parked there and withdraw it obviously when he needs it. So since he seems to have excess money, a better way of achieving the same objective would be to go in for this offset loan, max gain, call what you have. Almost every bank today has this availability of such a loan.
Yeah. So again, one question coming to you, very interesting question. The new income tax system which was introduced last year. I mean, old income, old and new, which I need to opt with the deductions available for the old and not available for the new. And my annual income is over 8 lakh rupees. What do you suggest? I think it's every
I've
individual depending on the situation.
I've yet to meet a person for whom the new system makes sense. So, I mean, I would be very happy to talk to this gentleman. I think it is a PR exercise, and the government has admitted as much that the new system isn't really being used. Okay, I think uh, simply because if you are salaried, if this gentleman is salaried, he would have some PF deductions. He would have some, children of school going age, and he would be paying their tuition expenses. He would have some life insurance, hopefully term insurance. Okay, he would have some health insurance. This is irrespective of the tax break. Now when he takes tax breaks on that and he does the calculations, he will find that the new one just does not make any sense. So, as I said, I have yet to meet any person for whom the new system makes any kind of sense.
Fantastic. And there were a lot of good feedbacks for all that conversations. Everyone says, thank you so much for it. Excellent deliberations. We enjoyed. There are a lot of positive feedbacks. I'll just leave it and take the questions. This question, again, you addressed, but let me put it again. Markets are at new high. Is it better to reduce equity exposure in NPS? Is it a better option? Is NPS a better option?
That's for Amit, for me.
Uh, any one of you can take it, sir, whichever.
Amit?
You want me to go? Okay. So again, it's looking at your own situation as we discussed earlier, and look at your portfolio allocation. Because of the market surge, if the equity allocation in your overall portfolio has gone up, then there is a reason that you need to cut down the equity exposure. But beyond that, can we really time the market? So today at 50,000, we are seeing Sensex is at all-time high. Just remember that roughly a year back, on 14th of January 2020, Sensex had hit 42,000 points, and that happened to be all-time high then. And after that, people thought that it will continue to go up, and the Sensex went down. So it gave a surprise. And in March, when it was at 25,000, people said, okay, this is doomsday, and the markets can never recover. And today we are sitting at 50,000 points. Is it easy to predict the market movements? No, it's not. It's almost an impossibility. So don't look at the market levels. Look at your portfolio percentage allocation and then take a call. If that tells you that your equity exposure is on a higher side, you may want to pare it down, but otherwise, no need to do any tweaking.
Thank you so much, Amitji. Amitji, this is a question coming from Mr. Mohan Chandra Sahu. Current situation, in investing in domestic companies or foreign companies, which is better and why?
It's not an either or question. It's actually invest in both. Uh, you need a diversified portfolio. And what is the basic purpose of diversification? Because we don't know everything, that's why we need protection, and diversification offers that great protection. If I know everything about something, then I have to put all my money at that one place only. But because I don't know, that's why I diversify. And given that, diversification should be considered at four different levels. If I were to define it: one, company level; second, industry level; second, asset category level, which is equity, debt, real estate, commodities, etc., etc., and fourth is geographical or currency level. So even within stocks, you invest internationally for very large portfolios. Even some of the currency exposures are really going to help in terms of stabilizing the overall portfolio. I'm not saying enhancing returns, but stabilizing the portfolio variability. So that's where international, yes, along with domestic.
Fantastic, sir. I think, I'm skipping those questions which are related to the economy in a big way, micro and macro, because I felt personal finance need to be given priority to the people. I mean, this is a question. That is the reason I'm skipping. Friends, please don't think that I have not read your questions. There is a question from Mr. Srinivas Ramachandran says, steps taken by the budget to blur the huge wall between micro and macroeconomic spheres. I'm sure please do attend one of a few of our fund managers calls, or you can attend any of those sessions which are happening across the channels from various economists. But here I thought, well, let me focus on personal finance. And this question comes to Harsh sir. Anuj Mathur is asking, how good is to invest in gold bonds? And second question is, term insurance which gives, is there is any other term insurance which can give an assured return after the stipulated years?
Okay, so the first one I'll answer. The first question was about sovereign gold bonds. Now you have a choice, right? I can invest. So this is investment. This is no emotional attachment, right? So I could invest, let's say, in a gold coin. I think that was also asked some time back. Versus I can invest in a sovereign gold bond. Now let's look at the differential. When I put it in a gold coin, okay, the person from whom I buy the gold coin will charge making charges on the gold coin. There will be GST on the gold coin, which I have to pay, and then I bring it home. Then I have to keep it in a safe place. So I rent a safe locker where I put it. There are charges I incur there, and how much is it paying me? Nothing. All that it is doing is obviously the value of gold over time goes up, and that is the return I make. So that return minus all these costs that I incurred is my net return. Now, if I put it in sovereign gold bond, it is based on the price of that day, but does not include the GST. So I have not paid that 3% GST. So I'm 3% on from day one. Okay. Plus, the government of India is good enough to tell me that they will pay me a 2.5% interest, taxable, but still they will pay me an interest. And 5 years later, when the gold bond comes up, 8 years later, I'm sorry, when the gold bond comes up for maturity, okay, whatever capital gains, so again, it will be based on the price on the day of the maturity. I will be paid that. The cherry on the cake is that whatever capital gains are there, assuming there are capital gains, are completely tax free. Whereas in the physical gold coin, whatever capital gains I made, I would have paid tax on it. Now I will leave it to him to decide whether he is better off. So the only difference is gold coin he can touch, feel. Okay. Sovereign gold bond is just an entry in your demat account.
That's
okay.
it.
If he is very particular, he can get a certificate. And it is a solemn promise of the government of India. So, I mean, it depends on him what he wants to do.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you so much. Probably, I'll take this last question, but there are a lot many compliments to both of you. Thank you so much for each one of you. It's amazing compliments coming from many of the people. Even some of them I have sent the messages have come. Somebody said, Harsh sir's presentation was awesome. There is a WhatsApp message which is coming in, and that's a. And here is a last question. I think this question again goes to Harsh sir, and um, what are the investment opportunities available for non-resident Indians to invest in Indian financial market?
So that's such a lovely question. I think non-resident Indians are an important reason why India has been able to reach where it has reached. I think they are an important cornerstone of the Indian economy. And I think successive governments, every government has recognized it. And I think over the last 4 or 5 years, several things have been done. Whether it was the OCI card, that allowed non-resident Indians, but who may not be citizens of India, but who are of Indian origin. They can come into India at any time. They can do anything that an Indian can do, except vote, of course. And very, very some small restrictions are there. But other than that, they could do everything that an Indian can do. They can invest as an Indian can invest. I think that in terms of people who are still overseas and who still remain non-resident, I think there are a range of tax advantaged investments. So if you look at fixed income, and if you are willing to invest in the Indian rupee, then you have the NRE accounts with banks which are extremely safe, and you get very attractive yields, given that yields are negative or negligible overseas. Okay, even today on an NRE fixed deposit, at least in India, you would be able to get 5.5% from excellent banks, some of the best banks in the country. And it is completely tax-free in India. It may be taxable in that country, but at least it is tax-free in India. If you want to invest in foreign currency, look at the attraction. I mean, if you are investing in a 1-year dollar FCR deposit, which means you're not taking a currency risk, you could still get, I have not looked at the latest figures, but you could still get about 2% return. Whereas whatever dollars you deposit overseas, you will, I mean, if you get some return, you would be extremely pleased. So, I mean, the differential is so large without any additional increase in risk. Of course, if they invest in equity, they can invest like any of the resident Indians. They can invest, they have to pay the taxes just like anybody would pay. There is a separate chapter for them that is not used very often, which is chapter 12A. But that chapter is also there. So I think there are several advantages that people have. There are several plans for people who intend to come back and settle in India. There are things that they should be doing before they come. There should be things that they should be doing after they come. And I think take advantage of all this and invest in this country that has given you so much, and in return will continue to give you so much, and to reward the faith that you see in our country.
Thank you so much, Harsh sir, with that positive and optimism. The NRIs, the Pravas Bharati. Yeah, I mean, NRIs is the non-resident Indians, but the way you have explained to us is now they reinvest in India, and NRI now reinvest in India, and NRI is now returns to India. And friends, I would like to glad to announce and share as we start from April with Harshji, we do a lot of conferences exclusively focusing on NRIs and when we start with NRIs, we start with a God's own country with Kerala. When we work with Kerala, it is a Manorama, none other than a great partner to us, and we look forward. Thanks to both of you for a great advice. But last final word from Amit ji and both of you. What is the single advice to the investors at the post budget and post this session?
I think I'll repeat what I just mentioned some time back, that this is Government of India's budget and not our budget. That is our own responsibility. We can't outsource that job to the finance minister. She's too busy for that. So let's prepare our own budgets and cash flows based on our own unique situation, the family's unique situation. Then a couple of things, as you're mentioning, the crisis came from outside, but still the government decided to focus inward and looked at its own finances and come out with various policies and plans. That's precisely what we need to also do. So this is our budget. Let's do it ourselves and have a very, very happy and healthy 2021 and beyond.
Thank you so much, Amit ji. Over to you, Harsh sir.
So budget or no budget, I think one advice to everybody, and if we let's turn to shooting for this instance, when you are shooting at a target, you do the sequence is ready, aim, shoot. But I think most people who don't really think about it would do ready, shoot, and there is no aim at all. So I think if we translate this into our financial lives or our lives itself, financial life is a part of our overall life. I think it needs to be think, plan, act. Okay. And I think there is far too much focus on act and not enough focus on think and plan. Please give more focus on think and plan than on act. As they say, If you don't know where you want to go, any road will take you there. So please know where you want to go before you embark on your journey.
Thank you so much for that optimistic note from both of you. It is not your budget. No, it's a union budget. It's a personal budget. Think, plan, and act. It's have your own goals. Probably, I always keep telling our investors when I was on ground meetings. I mean, most of the times we are worried about world countries' GDP. But you need to don't worry while worry don't worry about countries GDP. It will grow. I mean, it will grow faster and it will enable now. But you need to work on your GDP, that is your goals, your dreams, and your plans. It is not the gross domestic product of the country, but your goals and your dreams and plans. Think of your goals and plan of your for your dreams and act for it. That is where your plan smartly. What think, plan, act of Harsh has said, and like similarly Amit ji, when he said your budget, have your own expense statement, your own personal finance, and is my GDP kind of it is the world. And thanks to both of you for sharing your insights. A lot of compliments to both of you. And thanks for joining us. And we look forward many more sessions. Audience, I think, hope you all had a good time. This budget definitely given a positive impetus to us. It is a budget for the growth. Budget as I mean, Harshji mentioned in his presentation, it is a promising budget. This is a budget promising, and it is a budget growth and budget for the infra revival. It is a budget has given the room for optimism, and this will fill up for the. This is a budget which is the beginning for the decade. As a decade coming in, if you can read many of the economists, what they say is India is expected to grow in the next year at 12% and later on 7 to 8% over a period of the rest of the decades. That you can factor into it. You can rebalance your assets and you can reallocate depending on your goals. Of course, when markets may consolidate, markets may have high volatility. Don't look at and don't go. While being optimism is good, but I am always worried. Managing fear is much more easier. Managing greed is much more difficult. And manage your greed, balance your fear, and have one good advisor. And India is on the glorious decade ahead, and India is going to be a growth stock of the world. But take care of your finances. There are 9 pillars for the Atmanirbhar Bharat, which was the sankalp that made us to strengthen that sankalp of Atmanirbhar Bharat with the 6 pillars on the budget. But look at what are your 6 pillars for your investments. The first pillar should always be a goal and your family and your expenditure and your, get all that right. Wishing you all healthy, wealthy, and wise times, good times. And we look forward to come back next month. It is a Women and Finance with Magazine Week. I'm very grateful, thankful to Matthew sir, Sri sir, and Mr. Varghese Chandy sir, and Oman and the entire team which worked hard and such a good attendance. And we have over 2,200 people registered, over 500 people participated in the session. It's great, and wishing you all good times. And tomorrow being Sunday, having heard from both the eminent speakers, ensure that you spend with your spouse whatever you learned. Go back onto the not the drawing table but the dining table. Look at how your finances can look at next year. Don't look at union budget to come when it comes. You look at your budget is much better, and union budget is at a fiscal deficit. Your budget should be a surplus, always surplus budget. Your budget should give you the growth map for your life. And a union budget can do whichever the way it wants, but your budget should be the way you want it. Over to Matthew sir, and thanks so much for everyone. And God bless you all. Stay invested, stay happy, stay healthy. And still there is a virus. Don't take chances, and have that precaution of a social safety. And I always say wear the mask, MASK. And similarly, MASK for your investment is manage your assets, manage your wealth, M with asset allocation. S is staggered investment. K is the right knowledge always. Wishing you all the good luck. Over to Mr. Matthew.
Thank you, Rauji. I just take 30 seconds to thank everyone who has been with us for so long. Thank you so much for taking time out of on a Saturday morning to be. I am very, very sure that you have been amply rewarded by the advice. Never have these gentlemen ever promised to, double anybody's income or have made fantastic claims. They have been always very pragmatic, very brutal. And Harshji has been especially so this time. Then we were... I think about a few sessions back, Rauji and I were joking about another friend of ours, Mr. Subramani, who's also a very plain-spoken, outspoken person who gives right advice and sane advice, which is very difficult to come by. I hope you have benefited from it. For news, please follow us on Twitter at The Week Live. And these three gentlemen are on Twitter for investment advice. Please do follow Raoji at SR Koti, SRKOTI, Amitji at Amit M Trivedi, Amit and then M caps and Trivedi, and Harshji at Harsh Roongta. He spells it with an ROONGTA. Harshji spoke about taking a road and going on. And one thing that I would like to remind is that everybody, including Raoji and whom I've met here, all of them have their own personal advices, and that should speak volumes about what you should do. And Raoji always reminds us that the most important part is to take ego out of investing, and I really do hope that you would be able to do that. From all of us, here is wishing you a wonderful weekend ahead and a great week also. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks a lot, Mr. Matthew. Thank you. And wishing you all, Amit and Harsh, infinite of opportunities and always being happy like Harsh ji. That's it. Thank you so much. God bless you all.
Thank you, sir.
We'll take leave then. Bye.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Bye, sir. Harsh ji, bye.